we all have to be button up, and we all have to be proper and professional, so that if I'm more professional than this person, then I'm better than this person. And it becomes this competitive thing. And like, I don't like that at all. I don't want anyone to feel like information security or the hacking community is a meritocracy where you only earn your way in and then you have to try to be better than people. It's more like, come in here. We're solving problems and having fun. And if you say you're here, you're here. You're not less than. You don't have to keep earning it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the 401 Access Denied podcast. I'm the host for the episode today, Joe Carson, Chief Security Scientist, Advisory CISO at Delinea. And it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited. I always enjoy these times. This is my favorite time of the week, is when I get to have a fun conversation with an awesome guest. And today's guest is Bryan Seely. So I'm glad to have Bryan on the show. And Bryan, you want to give us a bit about your background, what you do, and maybe how you get into cybersecurity. What was your entry point? I think that's also very interesting as well.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Brian. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you again for having me, Joe. It's good to see you again. Um, let's see, I got into IT when I was about 2 years old. I had a computer when I was like two. I started consulting. I lived in Tokyo in a community of around a private school
Mhm.
in Northwest Tokyo. And I think I started getting paid around middle school. So
Mhm.
while everyone else was learning how to talk to girls, I was working on the computer. And I think I missed that day in school. So it's just been kind of computers the whole time. I ended up going into the Marine Corps,
Mhm.
into signals intelligence, and a very sort of similar track to one of your other guests on the Cyber podcast with Dave Kennedy.
Yeah,
He
Dave.
ended
Yeah,
up
yes.
he ended up going much further along with the government services, and um,
Mhm.
but very, very small community there.
Absolutely. It's all
So
well connected. Everyone knows everybody.
yeah, lots of mutual connections. And yeah, we're Marines, so it's a brotherhood. So after the Marine Corps, got into network, took a course on CCNA, and got some MCSE kind of things, all related to Link. Ended up in Seattle 10 years ago, right around the time I ended up wiretapping the Secret Service and the FBI without permission.
Yeah. So tell us a bit. I mean, that was probably a interesting moment. I think during I think a lot of our careers, we always especially in mine as well. I've been doing a long time, and similar to yourself, at school, I was making money off just putting games on computers, and then the IT would
Yeah,
take it
that
off
was
at
it.
night,
Like,
and I would put
yep.
games in the next day. So that was my kind of, and we always got around. It was mostly to feed our passion. It was mostly to deal with our curiosity. A lot of us had this curious, what can we do? What can we achieve with this? And at the time, it wasn't something that, it wasn't well documented in a lot of cases. It was all self-learning and
It
self-paced.
could have been, but there was no internet. So
Exactly.
all the floppy disks. Had boxes of floppies that I'd be cloning them
Mm.
and giving them to friends, and then we got zip disks.
Oh, zip
Oh
disk,
my
yeah, the
goodness!
fun. I've got a bunch of them in the back here, so a lot of old retro stuff, and even even for me, being from originally from Belfast, I had a lot of challenges. Even was that in the community, there wasn't a lot of people in Belfast who was into what I was doing. There's a very small group of us, and we would have to wait for the type-in programs coming in the magazines. That was really difficult to get. And I remember spending weeks typing in BASIC and trying to get things to work and finding problems and so forth. So,
You
so it
had
was
the
always
same problem
curiosity.
I did then. I could go down to there's an area in
Mm.
Tokyo called Akihabara, which is the electric town. And
Yep.
that's where all of the PC software gets sold. And I mean, you go there and it's every possible tech related novelty. You can buy every kind of
Mhm.
vacuum now and like every kind of thing. But it was Japanese OS,
Yep.
not English. So you couldn't really find, you'd have to either cope with brand new Japanese, and like if you couldn't read the very complicated characters, you're screwed. So you had this like language barrier and you couldn't get access to stuff, and the internet was just right around 95,
Mhm.
96. We had a modem, and then an ISDN, and then a cable modem, and I remember like, oh, I could get an MP3 in like 3 minutes.
I
Whee!
remember the little LimeWare, the things about trying to download things and upload because the speeds were so slow. I mean, you would leave your computer connected overnight just to try and get a couple of music files. It was
LimeWare should now be renamed to Patient Zero.
yes, we, we were very. I mean, those watching those uploads and downloads, it was. I mean, it was like watching grass grow. I mean, we must have been the most patient people on this planet, and like even you're mentioning about going and getting documentation. And you have the problem with having in Japanese and this characters. For me, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I did was I spent all my childhood. I never read, you know, fiction books. I never, at a very young age, I wasn't reading, was it, the books that you would typically get, in education. I was reading the fridge manual and, basic computer and Commodore manuals. And I was reading, I was the manual person. It was a manual. I would read it from cover to end.
That's so cool.
So, and that was
It's,
really
it's
kind of
it,
where you get into
it
troubleshooting things.
it might not be ideal from like being popular or fitting in then, but you look back now and you're like, why would I have even cared about fitting in anywhere that in that time period of life? Because now you've got a useful skill out of it.
Absolutely, and it was. I mean, it's interesting because for me, there was always the game side of things was the passion for me. That was what kind of was the charge. It was the gaming side, and it was always the goal to get the games. But it was in order to get there, I had this curiosity of how did I get? How could I feed that? How could I fund it? And how could I make it even better? So you had to learn how the basics of everything as well. So you always get in those curiosities. Everyone has a certain segue in their life, so if you can elaborate what kind of took you to wiretapping the Secret Service? What
Uh,
was the trigger? What kind of made you get into doing that? And
the so the lead into that was I had worked for a guy building helping build a business, and what I thought was actually data entry on Google Maps, Yelp, any directory service that has businesses overlaid on a map. And then we experience a lot of these same problems in Amazon or other places where there's fake reviews. Anytime you can get public opinion to look really good on something, but really it's just a bunch of people with VPNs, it's it's bad guys find a way to game the system to dupe consumers. And this is on such a broad scale. It's in every country. It's not just US isolated. If you went on let's say Bing Maps for example, and you look for a locksmith, locksmiths was the primary problem area for a lot of these mapping engines, and Google's the biggest one. That's why I used them in this sort of experiment, because I was trying to get them to solve the problem. Like, hey, you guys have a really big issue here. People are faking the top 10 results, and it looks really, really good, but they're not real. You call the number, and it goes to a guy's cell phone or it goes to another business name, and it's a lead gen tactic. So people will create. It starts off with somebody who is, let's say, a carpet cleaner. It's a business that does not have people coming to you like a restaurant. You go to the customer, whether it's a consumer or a business. Now, that guy decides to open up 10 offices around the city, but he doesn't want to open 10 offices. He just wants 10 places. So he goes to UPS store, post office box, something like that, gets mail, verifies his business, and now he has 10 phone numbers gathering calls, and now he's in the top 10, let's say 4 or 5 times for that region. That's scenario one. Scenario two is I don't even have a carpet cleaning business. I'm going to go ahead and just create these all over the country, put them to a call center, and if if I'm really clever, I can sell the phone calls to local carpet cleaners, which if you really think about it, is stealing the calls from them to sell them back to them at a higher price.
it's it's
And if somebody
it's
ends up
ads.
listening to this,
It sounds like
it's
ads.
theft. It is. And in addition to that, they'll have banner ads
Hmm.
saying locksmith special, lockouts $15.
Hmm.
You click, you get a person. whether you did it through a web form or you called them or whatever, you mention the special, they show up, they unlock your car, and then they ask for $200, or I'm going to kick your ass, or
Yep.
I'm going to steal your money. And when I was doing research for my book, it's not something I'm promoting. It's on
Mhm.
Amazon. You can actually get it for free on PDF from Brian Krebs' website. If you look up my name, book,
Mhm.
Krebs on Security, he published it for
Oh, well,
free at my request.
okay. We'll make sure that we can actually get it in the show notes as well. So, make sure it's easier for people to get to.
The
So,
Krebs
absolutely.
on Security edition.
Yeah.
So, some woman from Google was locked out of her car on campus, found one of those ads, called it, and got robbed. So, like, this is a really big problem. But the lead gen one, where you're not even actually servicing any of the calls yourself and selling them back, that starts to get. I can see why it grows, because it works and people end up making tons of money, and there's so many different industries. So I'm trying to end this, and I'm wanting to get Google to fix it, but they're not. So I'm like, how about I make some funny business listings to try to like get some attention to this. So I put, let's see, I renamed a concentration camp in North Korea Super Mega Fun Time Happy Land. It's a South Park joke. I renamed the Westboro Baptist
Mhm.
Church to not a adult toy store and sex dungeon. Um, a lot of different funny little
Mhm.
pranks, I would say. The Church of Scientology, stuff like that. I think I made the Church of Scientology a comedy club, and then I changed the Russian embassy
Mhm.
in the UK to be a gay bar,
That that's
and then used and
that's
took a picture of that somebody doesn't like of themselves with a rainbow background.
Mhm.
Use that as the cover photo. I'm not allowed to go to Russia. Let's just put that. Let's
I'm
just
pretty
say
sure
that.
this. Yeah.
But that didn't really get the problem solved. And I thought,
Mhm.
okay, humor isn't it. Maybe if I could go a different direction, instead of going after money, I could pretend like I'm going after intel.
Mhm.
What if I were to duplicate a law firm
Mhm.
and get all their inbound calls, or a campaign for a presidential candidate, or a congressman? Oh, what about law enforcement? And that's when
Mhm.
my brain thought, hey, what about the Secret Service in DC and the FBI in San Francisco? And
Mhm.
that's when my brain said, let's do that. And I should have had another part of my brain that says, you shouldn't do that.
that's that's always the case because you're always looking for the biggest impact. Because if you're in a point of time and you want people to listen and they're not listening and no one's fixing the problem, and you're saying this, on a major scale, that and you find that there's no way forward. Sometimes the biggest impact is the one that makes people turn their heads. It's the one that can be shocking. Um,
I Yeah, it's there's been I've told the story so many times, but when I hit a certain point in the story where my brain goes, "Oh yeah, you remember this?" and it's like, "Oh, that's a bad idea." Oh,
You've got the two voices on either side. One saying, "That's actually,
like,
that will get people listening and paying attention." The other one's going, "You don't know what the potential consequence of this might be."
so I I set it all up, and I flagged the Secret Service location, the real one in DC, as spam
Yeah,
a bunch of times. Kind of like putting on a bunch of fake reviews, but the opposite. I wanted to take theirs down and make mine the default. It
yeah. You're,
worked.
you're
All
switching the priority of the page. You're basically, you're degrading them from bad reviews and you're increasing yours from good reviews. It's
And theirs ended up
yeah,
disappearing. And so mine became the default when you search Secret Service Washington
yeah.
DC. And immediately calls started coming in, and I started getting the recordings, because I
Mhm.
was taking the phone number that was on that listing and forwarding it to the real Secret Service.
Yep.
And then I listened to two of them, and I was like, oh no, I got to call somebody. So I called a friend, and I called a couple other
Mhm.
ones, and they told me go to their office tomorrow. And it's Seattle, so there is a Secret
Mhm.
Service office here. And I walked in and told them. Well, they told me to leave. They didn't believe me. So I'm standing there with three agents in a room. I'm like, okay, I just did the dumbest thing in the world. Came and told you, you guys are
Mhm.
just like, go, we'll get a hold of you if we
Don't
have any
believe you.
issues. Okay, I can prove it in less than 5 minutes. Just call the
No.
DC office of the Secret Service right now from your cell phone. Just call them and I'll deal with it. And if I can't prove it, I'll leave. And if I can, you'll listen. Seems so stupid in retrospect. So the guy picks up his phone, he taps on it a few times. Yeah, he talks to the guy on the other end. You can tell a couple of things by this call. He knows that person personally, they've spoken before, it's a small agency. Quick 1 minute phone call, hangs up. I get a notification on my phone. Would you like to listen to the campaign new call to the campaign Secret Service? Yes, I would. Click speaker. And then I played back and you hear ringing and you hear a guy's like, Secret Service. So cool. The guy's so cool. And then now you hear both voices and the other agents in the room who weren't on the call either. They heard it and I heard it. And then they lost their sense of humor completely and I lost all my stuff and they handed me a form saying you understand your Miranda rights. However, you're not under arrest. And so for all the people, have you ever seen those YouTube videos of people going, "Well, am I if I'm not under arrest, am I free to go?
No.
Can I?"
You're in cozy land. You're in this gray area.
I found my way into this weird little world where they're like, "We'd love you to come back to the guest suite for a few hours.
Yeah.
We'd like to ask you the same question 100 times." I demonstrated how to build a listing 5, 6 times,
Mhm.
building new ones. It took a little while because they wouldn't let me on their Wi-Fi.
I wonder why.
So that resulted in the head aided assistant to the deputy director
Mhm.
is on the West Coast. That's like number 4 in the organization. He actually is out of Seattle. He called Google, yelled at them for a bit. They turned off
Mhm.
map verifications for 2
Mhm.
months. They ended up getting rid of Mapmaker as a product, which is the back end community editor.
Yep.
And I ended up getting death threats from people for it, which the Secret Service actually got
Where's the death
removed
threats
from.
coming from? How is like so? Is this from?
Locksmith scammers, people
Okay,
who are building listings using the methods
the
that I
ones who
showed
are
them how to
basically
use.
getting away with the fraud side of things, the ones who are stealing, the ones who are creating their own ads for
Right.
yeah.
Now, I've not seen many things get removed from the internet, let alone quickly, but the death
Hmm.
threats on this one forum were removed in like 10 minutes.
Hmm.
Gone. You couldn't find them after one phone call. Like, that's magic.
Yeah. There must so I mean I'm pretty sure the government has a good forget was it
Yeah.
program that will search the internet and make things disappear very quickly. I'm sure that that does exist somewhere.
Yeah, you get a phone call from them. You're like, okay, all right. That was right after I got diagnosed with ADHD. I ended up getting clean and sober, and there was this whole uh, world opening up in terms of like my life got switched on because I was getting medicated for the first time and starting to and noticing and actually being able to apply the fact that I was decent at solving puzzles and maybe with a little bit of a rebellious hacker sort of attitude of and that's what the community's kind of taught me since then is like you don't have to have a proficiency level score of in anything to consider yourself a hacker or a information security professional. You have to have the challenge authority or challenge the way things have been done to do things a different way and try it and actually do it. Because how many people think, oh, that would be a great invention and then do nothing? It's the people who like, all right, well, I'm going to try it. Nope. Try it again. Nope. Try it again. Nope. And persist
It's going,
through.
yeah. It's going back to
Yeah.
that curiosity we mentioned at the beginning. When you're finding a way and something, to sometimes, as I mentioned, it was a drive, a passion, something else you want to do. You're always finding ways to make it possible, and that's the
And
curiosity side. I think that's in majority, that sometimes there's this misperception that we have in social media on the internet for the security world that you
if you
have to
say
be
hacker, it's negative. So
it's either a
we get it.
negative from a media or public side of things. It's a malicious, it's or that it's a certain skill set. But the hacker is such a broad term, and it's a mindset. It's really the curiosity, and I think it's really we have to get into that. It's majority of hackers are good people that's just curious about trying to solve a problem, or trying to do something that drives their passion, that drives their need for something. Either they just want to know how something works, so they pull it apart and they try to understand how everything works and connects. So for me,
It can
it's a
be
it's a mindset.
it can be as simple as the
Mhm,
movie Idiocracy
mhm,
when he's in prison and he just turns around and walks backwards and goes, "I
yep,
was just in there," and the guy's like, "All right, get out of here." Like
yeah,
if I walked forwards, that's normal. If I walk backwards, facing forwards, what happens if I do that? Or challenge it this way because you adversaries don't think like normal people. And oh, I saw a podcast about this actually very recently. There was a CIA agent who's no longer with the CIA saying, I get along better with criminals than I do with normal people because they understand everything I'm trying to do. Like saying, "Hey, my name is Bob." Well, why would someone change their name? People don't wrap their heads around it, and the confidence to go along with that could mean, all right, this guy's lying to me. This guy's, I mean, strippers do it every day, but you change your name to however you're going to try to pretend to be something for whatever reason, but it doesn't have to be criminal. It can just be an exercise in social engineering or practice or whatever. But being able to do that and think, well, why can't I do that? Why why wouldn't I just go pretend to be Bob for a day and introduce yourself and create a whole new life? It
yeah,
it becomes complicated, and if you
yeah,
don't have a reason for it, it's kind of silly, but the idea is criminals already think like that. And
yeah.
if you can't think like them, they're going to win every time.
Absolutely. And so it's about getting into that's one of the things I always think is getting into that mindset. The better we understand their mindset and techniques and their thought process, the more we can get into making it more difficult, making it more challenging, and putting up things that basically turn them away to other targets or other mechanisms. So absolutely. And I think it's really important, kind of that's something that we have to get into, is that this is as you mentioned, the social engineering side of things, they create different personas based on what they want to be that day. Everyone who's doing social engineering is looking, whether it being in the physical pen testing or digital pen testing online, they're creating those personas that will basically get them closer to the people they're going to interact with. They're going to have those conversations so they can actually be accepted much faster and be accepted as one of them.
It the practice of trying to think like a bad hacker isn't something new, and law enforcement does it every day with undercover
Yep.
operations. But in order to get accepted in undercover, you it's not just a digital identity. You got to look
Mhm.
the part. You got to
Yep.
grow your hair or cut your hair or grow a beard or shave your beard. You got to do a whole bunch of extra physical stuff, and that's
Mhm.
effort. And then you got to get good at lying to people in person. It's it's significantly easier to lie on the internet.
When you've got some anonymity, I think people have, and that's one of the problems, of course, in social media. People, they feel because there's no direct connection to them, they feel it much easier. There's less, let's say,
Exposure, yeah, you're
less.
not like you're not out in the sun like come and get me. It's for
Yeah,
like, "Hey, yeah,
yeah.
I'm huge. I'll kick
The
your ass."
ethics kind of, in the social world and online, the ethics kind of like somewhat kind of disappears a little bit for a lot of people.
Yeah, well,
The
there's
moral
that enough
compass
of
that
it
they have.
just
Yeah.
out of sight, out of mind, disconnect. It's
And
just a
the
game.
reality, yeah, the reality of the impact, they see it potentially as there's little harm can be done as a result of it. But in a lot of cases, actually, online can be somewhat more harmful to a lot of people as well. One of the things I want to so after you went in and you revealed and you showed the giveaways, what was the next stages when going through that process to kind
There
of
wasn't a lot extra. It was about
mm,
4 hours in a holding room
mhm,
and board. But after that, they're like, "Well, we don't see any criminal intent.
yes,
You came to us first. So this is definitely an anomaly that kind of it fits with like responsible disclosure.
Yep.
However, it's not a gamble that you should take. So for anybody
Absolutely.
who ever has a responsible disclosure like question of like, wow, how should I go about this? I've had circumstances where I've reported a bug to a company or found something that was so devastating live. One of those things was the largest bond insurance company in the U.S. and I found bank accounts records that had $15 billion in them throughout different accounts. And all you had to do was find there was a form online in there. You deleted a slash out of a URL and it gave you admin access without a username or a password. So it wasn't breaking any laws. And it was a Sev 10 CVE from 2 years prior that never got patched because there aren't a lot of Oracle experts. There aren't enough people, and they're expensive. So these organizations didn't hire them to patch their stuff. And if you faxed in the form with a new name saying add this person as an account manager, if the burden of the authentication process was does this person have the phone number and the form, if you do, then they're just going to add it. I could have taken enough money to go to the moon. I mean, I'm pretty sure the extradition treaty is fairly weak with the moon, and I would have had a lot of money, but they didn't answer.
Very expensive to
And
go get somebody from the moon as
I
well.
had to
The
get
cost.
Krebs involved, and he ended
Mm,
up calling them and putting an article up. And at which point they're like, "Oh, well, we thought he was trying to fish us."
mhm.
So the message where it says, "I'm not trying to fish you. I'm not trying to send you any links. Go to these places, delete this." Explaining it as easy as possible. Like, I don't want any money. Fix your
Yep,
problem, and they didn't.
yep.
So it's not always according to plan.
Absolutely. I think one of the good, at least the good things in recent years is that at least the laws around the Computer Misuse Act is actually improving. It's getting better,
Yeah,
because previously, you were even if your motives were in the right kind of intentions, you could still, be very, harshly criminalized. And it has been getting better to now it's where it depends on the motive, but you have to prove the motive in order to make sure that, was your motive for good intentions. So the laws are getting better, and the responsible disclosure is getting much better. And a lot of organizations are moving that direction where they're willing to get on the side of security researchers and ethical hackers, and work together in order to make the world a safer place. But of course there is a lot of organizations which are very, let's say, old school, and very, they're not willing to change, and they still do the old methods. And
those are the ones that are going to cover up a breach
yep,
instead of disclosing it and actually doing the right thing.
absolutely, those are the ones that's going to pay it off. They're going to pay the ransom, they're going to pay the attackers, and ultimately fund the crimes in the
That would be
future.
an uber mistake if I were to guess.
Absolutely. So, but I mean, this is really where. So what after that happened? What did you start? Did you find kind of a new path in your journey when eventually?
A bit, yeah. So that led me to I was still working as sort of a high level systems engineer. It definitely moved towards more public speaking. I got a TED talk out of it and was able to start realizing like, oh, I like educating people. I like explaining stuff to people. And I've spent my whole life sort of on the fly speaking English at a different proficiency level depending on where I live or who I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to people in Saudi Arabia, I'm not going to speak as fast. I'm going to enunciate better. If I'm back in Japan, same thing. And it's wanting to convey the message in a vocabulary set at a level that everyone understands rather than you need to adapt to me. I want to make this interesting for people. And I've always had a draw to stand up comedy. And I did open mic stuff for a couple of years prior to getting famous for the Secret Service thing, which was like, damn it, I wanted to be a famous stand up, not this. Oh,
I
well,
always find the friends of mine in the same industry that quite a few of them actually go to do stand up, and we had. A while back, we had Ian Murphy on, who's one of my favorite, guys from Liverpool. Even though we have a conflict, I'm a United supporter, he's a Liverpool supporter, so we have that conflict. But I always find that he also does stand up and he does these cyber house parties and stuff. And I think it's great because that having that comedy, bringing comedy. We need more comedy in our industry because it is a very scary, frightful industry. And I'm always talking about we need to bring the fun back in. We need to bring some of those pranks that we used to do years ago. That I find that the pranks have disappeared in this industry. A lot of it from the legal
It's
side, and it's more
yeah,
more visible.
it's become a there's been a lot of boring
Hmm.
just everywhere, and if you take yourself too if you take yourself too seriously for too long, you're living in a world that's not one you want to live in.
Hmm.
So even like hiding stuff in code or finding clever ways to say
The
something
comments.
inappropriate
Yes.
or immature. For example, my logo on
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
is BS. It's my initials, but that's the logo on my business card.
Mhm.
And it's 100% BS
It's
is what I tell
rememberable.
people.
It's
And
it's
they
definitely it's definitely a memorable statement. People
and
won't forget it.
everyone laughs. So everyone knows what it means, but no one's we all have to be in, button up, and we all have to be
Mhm.
proper and professional so that if I'm more professional than this person, then I'm better than this person. It becomes this competitive thing. And like,
Mhm. I
I
you
don't
know
like that at all. I don't want anyone to feel like information security or the hacking community is a
Mhm.
meritocracy where you only earn your way in and then you have to try to be better than people. It's
Mhm.
more like come in here. We're solving problems and having fun. And if you say you're here, you're here. You're not less than. You don't have to keep earning it.
Yep. No, I think absolutely. I think a lot of people, those who are doing the research, they do love the pranks. They do love to enjoy and bring the fun as much as possible. And I remember, years ago, one of the developers I worked with, he used to put in the error codes. The error code messages were hilarious.
That's
It
that's
was
my favorite.
so anytime something came up was an error code, there was some comical statement around it, like a joke saying, "We're sorry, you came to this point," and just some comedy statement.
But if you had to sit down and write out error codes, let's say that's your
Yeah.
task for the next 2 hours. If you made one of them funny, you're like, I wonder if I can make the rest of them funny. That 2 hours just turned into a
Something
whole bunch
fun.
of fun
Yes.
instead of
I even
like
I even
this.
felt I felt bad years ago. There was a period where there was a lot of pranks and fun happening, and I remember it was one of the guys I worked with. What we ended up doing was that was a time where you could turn a monitor upside down and it didn't look anything different, and then you would take a screenshot of the background and you would hide all the icons and turn the screenshot upside down, and all of a sudden, so that person came to the computer, and every time they moved the mouse, it would go in the opposite direction. It was so a
It's
lot,
so disorienting.
and just just watching that, it was the funnest part of the day. It was enjoyable, and I think that's what I enjoy, and I think definitely we need more comedy in this. We need more people who's doing stand up, and bringing some of those fun back in. So something
And
that
if
absolutely is
you
great to
think
see.
about it, if I have a task that I'm trying to learn, I've there's not many things I won't try to learn in that process to solve the goal. Like if I need to learn a few words of French, oh well, like bonsoir. Like I'll learn French. It just it doesn't see that's not like a barrier. If I wanted to learn how to flip the monitor upside down after taking a screenshot with all the icons and then hiding all the icons, so now you've got a screenshot that has icons, but none of them are clickable. If I need to learn how to do that, you better believe I'm going to learn it and I'll remember it way easier than if it was like a task on just a to-do
Uh,
list.
the other one,
It's
other
something you
fun.
have to get through.
The other one was the fantastic blue screen screensaver. That was a fun one. So you used to disconnect the mouse, and you let the blue screensaver go on, and the codes would change every minute or two. So I just
There is
this
a
guy.
fun there's a fun security application
Oh,
for stuff like this that I'm going to be doing a demo for some clients. Now,
mm, the bad USB was it?
yeah, this is
Yeah,
the OMG cable by
OMG
Hack
cables.
5. The MG developed
Yeah.
it, and that guy,
He's
bravo,
he's it
bravo.
was he really changed a lot of some of the industry kind of things, especially people getting any type of USB device. You never know what that's cable is going to be capable of, and it really kind of drove this whole data port blocking.
Even
So
experts like us
yeah,
wouldn't think that there's a web server in one of the ends of
yeah.
this. So you don't even have to plug both ends in for the bad
Yep.
USB to be active, for a keylogger to be active, for me to be sniffing all of the keystrokes.
Mhm.
Just and it looks completely stock. And
Yep.
you
Yeah,
can then
absolutely.
so what I'm doing for a demo,
Hmm.
which is kind of it's a different exercise because a all the devices in the audience are not mine.
Hmm.
So I can't really do anything like exfiltrate all their contacts to a Dropbox to show them that it's possible because they might have feelings about
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So
One of
instead, it's using my own device to
hmm.
rickroll myself while an audience member is holding it.
Yeah, so it's always great fun. I remember years ago, I did one where basically I hosted my own web, basically Wi-Fi access point. So just giving people free Wi-Fi, and people would connect to it. So I had a little basically acceptable use clause. But what I ended up doing was I was saving all of the advertisement images that was being fed back to the browser, and of course that's based on advertising preferences. And so what I did at the end of the day, I took all of those advertising images and I just went through my session just one by one, showing all of the images that were displayed back in their browsers as advertisements. It was hilarious. I mean, you had harmless things. It was like, hotel people looking for hotels, people looking for car rentals, books, vacations. People were, doing online educational searches. But then there was a lot of interesting images that eventually came up based on some people's interesting browsing habits. And it was a fun exercise, and the shock that people had about what data you can gather by just basically capturing some simple traffic, because a lot of the data was encrypted, but you could still see the external source images. So you couldn't
Right.
read your emails, but I could see what advertisement was being fed back based on their advertisement preferences. So a lot
And
of fun.
that's the barrier to entry for that, and the knowledge is fairly low. The hard I mean, you could get a Wi-Fi pineapple, you could go do war driving, you could go do a lot of different
Mhm.
things, and that's all doable in real life. Bad guys or a good guy could become a bad guy and
Very.
do a lot of that stuff very easily.
Absolutely. I mean, there's the low level entry side, but there's also then there's the even when you're into things like RFIDs, and that can get a quite expensive hobby. Even the hardware. I remember having Polino and the guys on Bo Woods and the hardware hacking. That can be an expensive hobby when you get into that side. Even the Joe Grand side of things, that's next level expensive when you're talking about oscilloscopes and doing
Oh
basically
yeah, goodness.
so.
Like, but some of the research that comes out of that, like we're able to get encryption keys from
But
an
just
air gapped computer using Wi-Fi sonography, and you're like, all right, dude, you need a hobby.
Yeah,
Like,
by just waving an electronic brush over to the chips to change the
it's like,
bits.
dude, that's a wand and you're a wizard, man. Like,
It's
that's
impressive.
magic. It is.
So,
But
so
those people advance things, and that's what we need a lot
really
of
eye
that.
opener. It really shows you kind of when you get into the bits and the binaries and what you can extract. So I've got a question. One thing was interesting you mentioned earlier was about ADHD. So what is it like working in this industry? Because I know it's a big topic as well, especially but I have a lot of peers who even just recently diagnosed with ADHD, and it's really can also highlighted that I think it's the industry that attracts those who are able to focus and pay attention to detail for long periods of time. So what would you recommend for people who do discover recently that they have ADHD? What would it be is there anything that they should avoid in the industry or anything that they should more focus on? And what
I
would be
would
some of the recommendations for those who
I
do have
would go
ADHD?
on YouTube and look up Dr. Barkley. He
Okay.
is one of the leading experts on ADHD, And for me, I have kids, and both of them have it. Both of
Hmm.
them have a different subtype. So there isn't ADD anymore, it's ADHD.
Yep.
And there are two subtypes:
Hmm.
inattentive and driven by a motor, essentially. So
Yep.
my 8-year-old son, who's just like constantly
Fidgeting and changing.
everywhere,
Yeah.
that kid is just, it's impossible to like nail him down.
Hmm.
He's driven by a motor. Now, my daughter, she is, it looks a lot like depression
Hmm.
for, and I'm inattentive as well. So the number one way to deal with ADHD is to medicate and then do behavioral therapy. Without the medication, whether it's a stimulant or non-stimulant, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, doesn't work. It doesn't, you, the kid can't, it's like trying to will yourself through a brick wall. It just doesn't work. There's, it's like a combination of negative emotions and the difference between believing it's possible and like, I don't even care if my house is on fire. You can't get the motivation unless something extreme happens, like someone's hitting you or someone's stealing your stuff. There's, it's really frustrating.
Hmm.
But once you
Hard to
start
drive the
getting
emotion and the yeah.
medicated properly and you're on the right dosage, and it can take a little while to get the dosage right, like you start off at a, let's, instant release or an extended release, whatever. I encourage people, if someone's telling you not to take medications, that's a belief that they have for them.
Hmm.
That's for them. I also don't drink. I don't drink alcohol. And I don't like broccoli. Now, if I go to dinner and they order broccoli and a beer and a burger, and I order something else and I have a Red Bull, they're like, "Oh, you don't mind if I drink, do you?" I'm like, "No, I don't. Why would I? I don't like broccoli either. Don't make me eat that. I'm not going to have the alcohol. I'm not going to have the broccoli or Brussels sprouts. Those are the things I just don't like." But the alcohol is the one thing that the people have a problem with, or think that I'll have a problem with, and maybe out of courtesy or being respectful. So ADHD, a lot of people have a lot of opinions and none of them matter. Your doctor matters, your mentor or maybe advisor or somebody you give a, like your family who you trust, that's who you should listen to. Start with Dr. Barkley lectures on it, for he talks about it for helping parents deal with kids or for yourself. It makes a, it was like switching on a light switch. I went from not reading books for 10 years and off and on being I was a homeless drug addict twice in my 20s, to writing a book and having a career, and being a single parent of my kids, and a complete life turnaround, because that was one of the biggest changes.
Okay.
It was just, it was night and day.
Is there any specific area that you find that you enjoy in the in this security industry that kind of your ADHD benefits with, or kind of you can actually relate with? Is there a specific
So
kind of?
one thing I like to say is like, I don't do well when there's only 1,000 or 2,000 RPMs on the gauge. So if my
Mhm.
brain's engine is only running at just sort of idle, it's
Okay.
hard to get momentum.
Hmm.
But if I'm starting to like, I I try to listen to music that doesn't have lyrics or it's in a
Okay.
language I don't understand, because now it's not processing in my brain.
It's revving up the end. It's revving up the brain, kind of the kind of cycle
So
at a
I
much
listen to
faster pace.
EDM, I'll
Yeah.
listen to techno, I'll listen
Hmm.
to stuff with bass in it, something that starts to build and
Hmm.
could have 45 minutes. Sometimes it's a DJ set,
Hmm.
some whatever I can do to just, all right, start getting in the groove, because I don't like getting interrupted.
Hmm.
Changing tasks is really hard for people with ADHD, and it takes a while to learn that.
Okay.
Hyper focus is a symptom, meaning
Hmm.
you focus really well on one thing and then abandon everything else. But if you're not into something,
Hmm.
it's so hard.
It's just getting the motivation and the kind
The
of the
trick,
acceleration. Yeah.
The trick is what we were talking about
Mhm.
earlier, is finding a way to gamify it or make it fun.
Mhm.
Then that's a whole different then it's a whole different thing. If you're making fun of stuff or you're finding ways to get your job done while, you know, goofing off with your friends, it's
Mhm.
not a chore anymore. But
Absolutely.
if it's work and it's supposed to be work and it's not supposed to be enjoyable, oh, good luck.
Yeah, we definitely need to do more gamification to make it fun. Definitely for that. Question: So you're always doing a lot of speaking engagements, and you're doing usually a lot of keynotes. Is there any places you're going to be in the near future where the audience might be able to catch you at? So is there any upcoming
Ooh.
speaking where you're going to be able
A
to
lot of them are private. I will be almost for sure in Austin in
Hmm.
September for Spice World,
Okay, for Spice World, yeah. Mhm.
and that should have some. Whether you remember, I don't know how the
Mhm.
availability and the tickets go. Um, People can always reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Twitter while we still have it, I guess. Uh,
Well, I, I'm confused with this new logo of like some was it like a wolf or something, a dog.
I'll look in 6 months when things finally calm down. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn a lot.
Mhm.
I have my website is bryanseely.com. You can
Yeah,
find me there,
we'll make
watch
sure that
videos.
from a social, we'll get all those links in the show notes
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well. So
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 I do a lot of private events where a company will pay me to speak internally or speak to their at their whatever conference. Sometimes, like I've spoken at RSA
mhm.
for I was there for VMware once,
Yep.
and they paid me to speak at an event. Um, Let's see. I'm in Luxembourg in June. At the end of June, I'll be
Okay.
in Luxembourg for 4 days.
So we do have an
Uh,
international audience. So that's
the
for sure.
IT gala. There's an
Mhm.
IT gala where there's like CISO or CIO awards,
Okay.
and I'll be the keynote there. And then, yeah, it's hit or miss sometimes. There's a few places in the
Mhm.
U.S. in the next month or two, but those are all
Okay.
private events, I think. So,
Okay, fantastic. But for even the audience, if you're looking to get Brian to come to your events, we'll make
oh, that'd
sure
be
that
great.
you have
Thank
the
you.
the access as well. So maybe you're not attending an event, but maybe you're looking for someone to speak and somebody to come along. So we'll definitely make that connection for you. So Brian, it's been fantastic having you on the show. We're
Oh, it's been an
always
honor. Thank you
learning a
for
lot,
having
and
me.
it's been a long time since we spoke. So it's really great to catch up again. Any final kind of thoughts of anything you would like to leave the audience with as a kind of some key takeaways or something that they would find it, to kind of, maybe improve, from their speaking or their passion or, how to get their motivation going.
If anyone's trying to keep you from moving up levels in IT security or like creating artificial barriers or being a gateway type person, you don't need their opinion. Those aren't the collective community. So for anyone trying to get into IT, remember that every single person on earth learned how to tie their shoe from someone else. Not a single person here invented tying their shoes. They read a book before you did. They didn't write the book. It doesn't make them better than you. It doesn't make them more capable. And you'd be surprised at what you can actually accomplish if you take care of yourself and you just give a crap. And there are people like myself and others who actually care about mentoring other people and answering questions and being helpful. And it's not always a like it's not like high school where people are bullying you or pranking you or it's a setup an elaborate trap to make you humiliate people. There are really good people in this industry. One guy with a couple people I noticed were on the Cyber podcast, like Lance James. What I love that guy. I co-founded Black Hat in Riyadh, and
Hmm.
he came as a
Yeah,
speaker last year.
that's the Black Hat in Riyadh was. I saw a lot of speakers that was going. It was impressive. I would love to get to go myself.
Do you want to?
I would love to, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
So
I, I'm not saying I co-founded it because
uh,
I'm trying to blow smoke. I actually co-founded the conference, so
no,
I'll
it's
get
it's
you in
been pretty
touch with
impressive. I was impressed with the a lot of my peers who were there were sharing a lot of their experiences, and for me, I've been to Riyadh quite a few times over the past. I just thought, the Black Hat, the show that they put on was impressive. The speakers they brought
I
in, and
I don't
the
even know how to explain it.
uh,
I was sitting in the green room when at the very first one. It was actually called Ad Hack, and
mhm.
Bruce Schneier and I brainstormed on a topic, and he actually gave me a speech idea the title and sort of gave me a bunch of really good advice. And I'm like, I'm sitting with Bruce Schneier. What is going on? Like,
Absolutely. Bruce is
it's a.
amazing,
I'll get
amazing
you in
guy.
touch with them, Joe.
So absolutely, that'd be fantastic. So again, many thanks for being on the show. It's fantastic to have you. We'll definitely make sure that all the kind of links and show notes that we'll make sure are available for the audience. So again, for the audience, Brian brought up an important point that just kind of reminded me. And a book that I read quite a few years ago now was called "It's the Way of the Superior Man," and I definitely recommend reading it. And it's about how to prioritize your life. And Brian brought up an important point about when you have barriers that's in your way, that it's always important that you can't take care of anyone else until you take care of yourself first. And that's the most important thing, is that always, you're the most important priority. Always make sure that before you try to help others, that you're helping yourself first. Put time aside for yourself. Put time aside for yourself for learning, for progressing your career, for enjoying life. And that's the best way that you can do in order to progress further. So the Way of the Superior Man, will definitely put it in. It was impressive read for me, and it really helped me make a lot of changes in my life in order to make sure that you're the first, you're the most important, and take care of yourself first. So for everyone, again, thanks for tuning in. Tune into the 401 Access Tonight podcast every 2 weeks. We'll bring in great speakers, thought leadership, to really help provide you a direction, and to really help get you all the information you need to make sure that you're on the right track, and getting all the information to help you ultimately make the world a safer place. So again, thank you. Tune in every 2 weeks. All the best, and take care. Stay safe.